Grammar isn't what ruins language learning. Bad grammar study is. Used right, grammar doesn't replace real input. It makes the language finally start making sense.
Look, if you've ever tried to pick up a new language as an adult, you have probably hit that exact wall of sheer, mind-numbing frustration with traditional grammar drills. You know the exact feeling we're talking about, right? Memorizing those endless verb tables, desperately trying to remember what a subjunctive even is, and then just totally freezing up the second you try to say a single word to a native speaker. Honestly, it's enough to make you wonder, is grammar actually the enemy of fluency? Well, welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving into this fascinating new report from Fluent Myth. They actually took these wildly popular language learning myths and tested them against hard scientific evidence. And we're going to use this to completely rethink how we approach studying. Because, spoiler alert, here is the absolute punchline of the whole thing. Grammar itself is not the villain. It's the way we've been taught to study it that's been holding us back. Okay, let's take a quick look at our roadmap for today. We'll start by debunking the two major grammar myths. Then check out what the evidence says and uncover something called the adult learner advantage. From there, we'll introduce the grammar as a flashlight framework. And finally, we'll replace your broken systems with a totally new actionable routine. All right, let's kick things off with section 1, the two grammar myths. To actually fix our study routines, we first have to admit that traditional classroom learning kind of scarred a lot of us. It forces learners into two really extreme, really unhelpful camps. On one side, you have the grammar-first approach. This is basically your classic high school trauma. Rules without any real meaning, memorizing completely abstract terminology just to pass a Tuesday quiz, and dealing with intense anxiety when you actually try to talk. But then, as a total overreaction to that, the internet popularized the grammar-free extreme. This is the whole idea that you should just bathe in input and ignore rules entirely. But honestly, that just leads to input without clarity. You completely miss crucial patterns, and you're essentially just crossing your fingers, hoping your brain magically absorbs the language by osmosis. Ultimately, you're just trading one feeling extreme for another. But hey, let's be fair for a second. Grammar got a bad reputation for a very good reason. It absolutely fails when it's poorly designed. I mean, think about it. We try to learn a grammar rule before we've had enough input to even care what the rule does. We study it without meaning, literally just shuffling words around on a worksheet without an actual message attached. We treat it like an academic glossary. We study it without actually practicing retrieval, without ever getting feedback, and worst of all, without ever returning to the real language to see it alive in a native speaker's sentence. When you do all of that, of course grammar feels like a prison. Moving right along to section 2, what the evidence says. So, if both the grammar-first and the grammar-free camps are totally wrong, what's the actual truth? Let's step away from internet opinions for a minute and look at the actual meta-analytic research. Check out this powerful finding from researchers Norris and Ortega. After synthesizing massive amounts of data, they found that focused instruction produced large, target-oriented gains. And even more importantly, explicit instruction generally outperformed implicit instruction for the forms being taught. This completely shatters that pervasive myth that difficult grammar just magically gets absorbed if you listen to enough foreign podcasts. Turns out, instruction actually matters. Now, what's really interesting about this is the nuance. Yes, grammar instruction works, but we absolutely have to understand how it works. While explicit instruction absolutely improves your grasp of targeted forms, we have to avoid a massive overreach here. Memorizing rules does not equal fluency. Think of grammar as an accelerator. It clarifies the input so you can acquire the language faster, but it is not the main fuel source. Just knowing the textbook rule for a past tense verb doesn't mean you can instantly fire it off in a fast-paced real-world conversation. Which brings us to section 3, the adult learner advantage. You see, so much of that grammar-free movement is based on this romantic idea that we should just learn like babies do. But let's be real, you aren't a baby. And honestly, that is a massive advantage. Adult learners are not just children with worse brains. You have incredible analytical abilities. You have what's called metalinguistic awareness, which is just a fancy way of saying you understand how the concept of language works. Plus, you have the capacity to deliberately use explanations to your advantage. Ignoring these adult superpowers just to chase natural acquisition isn't just frustrating for you, it is completely unscientific. You have adult tools. You should absolutely use them to short-circuit the learning process. All right, let's get into section 4, grammar as a flashlight. Okay, so if grammar isn't a massive textbook to blindly memorize, and it isn't some evil enemy you have to avoid, what exactly is it? Well, the grammar as flashlight framework is a total paradigm shift. Basically, grammar should only be used to illuminate patterns in the input. Imagine you are walking through a pitch-black forest. That forest is your new language. The flashlight, which is your grammar, reduces the ambiguity. It stops you from wandering around in the dark for 6 months, trying to figure out why a word ending keeps magically changing. But here is the critical thing to remember. A flashlight does not replace the forest, and it definitely does not walk the path for you. You still have to move your feet. Grammar just shortens your confusion. It shouldn't postpone your actual contact with the real language. But obviously, just shining a flashlight is only half the battle, right? Explicit rules only become fluent, automatic skills through targeted practice. Think about microdrills for a second. A good example of a microdrill is transforming 8 highly useful, deeply personal sentences. It's fast, it's targeted, and it's actually relevant to your life. The weak version, doing 50 abstract random workbook items about 2 strangers going to the bank. Or let's look at guided output. A great version of this is telling a short story out loud using a specific past tense contrast. The weak version is just having a totally free-flowing conversation with 0 targets and getting 0 feedback. Your practice has to bridge the gap between noticing the rule and actually using the rule.
And finally, Section 5, the new actionable routine.
So we've debunked the big myths, we've looked at the hard evidence, and hopefully we've changed our mindset. Now let's equip you with your new blueprint. We're going to apply this flashlight framework directly to your daily study. In phase 1 of the flashlight cycle, step 1 is absolutely not open a giant grammar book. Step 1 is meet the pattern in real input. You got to encounter the language out in the wild first, in a YouTube video, a novel, or a chat with a friend. Then, step 2, you notice you're confused and you go get a short, minimal explanation. Let the language itself create an itch in your brain before you go looking for the scratch. Once you have that brief explanation, step 3 is structured input. That means deliberately practicing seeing and hearing that specific form in meaningful sentences. Let's move to the second half and see how this builds into phase 2. Now that you've noticed the pattern, step 4 is to actively retrieve it from memory. Step 5 is to actually use it in your own output, speak it out loud or write it down. And then step 6, this is literally the most important part of the entire cycle, return to real input. Go right back to that podcast or that book. The ultimate undeniable sign that a grammar rule actually clicked for you is that the native input suddenly sounds so much clearer. The flashlight did its job.
Now, you are probably wondering, okay, so how much of my actual study time should I spend doing this? Well, the recommended dose depends entirely on your current level. If you are a total beginner, like A0 to A1, grammar is literally just for basic orientation. It should realistically only be 5 to 15% of your total study time. The absolute biggest danger at that stage is trying to master the whole grammar system before you've even gotten any input. But as you move up to intermediate and advanced levels, the role of grammar shifts. It becomes about precision and refinement. At that point, you apply it strictly as needed to fix very specific bottlenecks. Make no mistake, grammar should almost never take up the majority of your study time.
Let's boil this actionable routine down into a few golden, practical rules to take with you. First, never study a rule without examples. Seriously, a rule without examples is just trivia. Always study after you're confused, not before you make contact with the language. Make sure you attach every single rule to a real, tangible meaning. Also, if you look up an explanation, force yourself to convert it into active retrieval practice within 24 hours. And lastly, use feedback selectively. You want small, targeted adjustments. Do not overwhelm yourself with giant rule books that try to fix every single mistake you make all at once. I really want to leave you with this incredibly powerful quote from the report. Use grammar as a flashlight, not a prison. If it makes real language clearer, keep it. If it keeps you away from real language, redesign it. Honestly, this just completely reframes everything we've been taught. Grammar is not some terrifying test you have to pass. It is quite literally just a tool on your tool belt. If the tool feels way too heavy and it's slowing you down, drop it. But if it actually helps you see the path ahead of it better, turn it on.
So I'm going to end this explainer with a question for you to really think about today. Take a hard look at your own language study habits right now. Which part of your routine desperately needs a flashlight to help you overcome a frustrating bottleneck? And honestly, more importantly, which part of your study routine currently feels like a prison that you need to break out of? Audit your habits, grab your flashlight, and go get back to the real language. Catch you next time.
Want the full breakdown and the practical grammar workflow? Get the complete report and the Grammar as Flashlight cheat sheet on Patreon. Link below.